Now, the Minister for Communications, Denis and Taoiseach Varadkar are likely to face more questions and pressure from the opposition on the controversy about the proposed takeover of Celtic media by independent news and media. And joining us with that story and others this morning are Gerry O'Regan from the Irish Independent and Director of the Irish Academy for Public Relations, Ellen Gunning. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
The Denis and the Taoiseach have both said nothing to see here, move on, haven't done anything wrong. But when you drill down into it, and I think most people would agree that Denis is a good man trying to do a very good job. He's honourable, he's got integrity, he has paid for his integrity politically, and he stood up for what he's believed in. But how he can say that expressing a personal opinion to a lobbyist as a minister does not inform government policy or would not form policy in his department and think that that's okay is kind of beyond me, Ellen.
I think it's beyond everybody, to be honest. I mean, if I have an opinion about a merger between INM and Celtic Media, nobody really gives a rat's ass what I think. But if I'm the Minister for Communications, then you sit up and pay attention and say, oh, that's what she thinks. You can't draw a line between this is private person and this is the Minister. So anything he says in terms of I'm thinking of referring this to the BAI or this is what might happen or this is a possibility carries the weight of the Minister behind it. That's a given fact. What's interesting about this is that on the PR side, Naughten, who's actually a graduate of the Irish Academy of Public Relations, I should say that, was chatting with the Minister, and there was a line of command that made sense. So he got information that he thought isn't that interesting. Pass it on to his boss, who passed it on to his boss, who passed it on to his boss. That makes perfect sense. That's did you hear? But on the other side, on the Minister's side, he said yesterday something about, I'm paraphrasing him, it would have been better had the phone call not happened. He was the man who took the call, and he knew picking up the call he was talking to PR for INM. So I'm not clear, was it naivety? Did he really not realise that by saying this is what I'm thinking of doing or this might happen, that he was actually giving valuable information?
Gerry, how these things operate are if there's interested parties, the rules are that all of the interested parties have to be informed of any significant or crucial information at the same time. So therefore, no one party has an advantage over the other. Now, in this instance, although it was a personal conversation and opinion from the Minister to Mr. Naughten, that information was given to him, that personal opinion was given to him 2 months before it was made available to other people. Now, that's a breach of the rules, isn't it? Well, and it gave a distinct commercial advantage to the people that Mr. Naughten
Well, I suppose you could deduce from all of this that we have in both Britain and here what are known as lobbyists. And what lobbyists do is they're usually people who have access to ministers and to senior politicians. And what they do is they find out information. We have to remember there's one overwhelming underlying reality in all of this. Both parties involved never presumed that their conversation would go public. And that, of course, is what has put the whole sort of thing, the cat among the pigeons. And I'm just presuming that there's a whole area here of what lobbyists do. I presume there's X amount of them around Leinster House, you know, representing all sorts of people. And what exactly do they do other than try and find out information from people that they know? I think the overall thing in all of this is that this is one of these rows that does not resonate with the public as much as it does within the media bubble, say in Dublin. But it is very good ammunition at a time they desperately need it by Fianna Fáil in particular and the opposition.
But Fianna Fáil have said, sources have said, oh, well, look, it's not a hanging offence, no, so they're not going to do anything about it.
But what they want to do here is, I think this is not so much damaging to Naughten as it is to Varadkar. Because Varadkar has come in as the ultimate cool, clean hero.
Steve Silvermint.
The Steve Silvermint of Irish politics. This is not, it's not fatal, but it's a residual drip. And I notice the attack today is very much shifting again in Varadkar's direction. And they want to know what exactly is he going to say about all of this. And I thought he was very uneasy and very discomforted in the Dáil.
Yeah, normally when the opposition smell blood like this in the water, they go for it. And at least they look for a head. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now, Ellen. But speaking and following on from that, the Irish Times poll this morning has both the government and Mr. Varadkar's poll rating slipping, although he is at 55% by far and away. He has the best approval ratings of any political leader.
It's slipping, but there's nothing for him to worry about at the
And
moment.
it's still higher than Fine Gael and this government or the previous government have been for years.
He's still playing a stormer. I think people, the article this morning said more or less this is the start of the slide, that, you know, the honeymoon is beginning to be over. It may be, but he's got fantastic ratings still. He's still, 44% of people are still completely satisfied with the government, which is no mean achievement at all. I think the interesting thing from the poll for me was the fact that there was very little shift in Fianna Fáil. They were down, I think, 2 points or something, which doesn't really shake my boat. But the interesting part was that they were picking up again in Dublin. So the poll said that Fine Gael still got most of its support from kind of bigger farmers. Fianna Fáil still got the smaller farmers and the rural vote, but that they were picking up in Dublin. They lost Dublin badly the last time. So I think that might be one to watch. They're obviously doing a lot of work, which is under the radar at the moment.
OK. Sinn Féin got some bounce with the ascension with the coronation of Mary Lou. Not as much as they would have been hoping, I suspect.
Probably not, even though her personal rating was good. I think it's 33%.
But she's one of the best odd performers. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, and actually you could nearly deduce as well from this current poll that we're not going to have an election anytime soon, in the sense that...
Why?
Both main parties are afraid of their lives, that in actual fact there could be a Theresa May factor. It might go against them. And while Fine Gael are doing well and Varadkar is doing well, there's still a long, long, long way from actually achieving a Dáil majority. We come back to the great unanswered question, is that if and when an election happens, by design or by accident, who will Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael coalesce with to get the necessary numbers to form a government after polling day? There's one big elephant in the room.
Indeed, there is. Just finally, before we finish up, and the Minister for Housing, Eoin Murphy, will be with us a little later on. Council targets significantly lower than social housing waiting lists. The front page of the Irish Independent this morning, or sorry, the Irish Examiner, I beg your pardon. And it makes for very stark reading. 5,000 local authority houses will be built this year, right? Now, the Minister has given the 31 local authorities targets, a total of about 25, nearly 26,000 houses. 5,000 will be built. 20,000 of those would be private rented accommodation, which would be funded through the housing assistance payment and rental accommodation schemes. Now, we all know about rent. That's dead money. This is the state throwing a huge amount of dead money into this sector.
Do you know what I found myself wondering? That the state invested and local councils invested a huge amount in what we now call social housing, in providing social housing or apartments or flats for people, and then sold them all off to people. So we moved into that. We don't like to rent, because Irish people don't, as a general rule. We like to own. And now we've almost put ourselves back at square one, where we need to start building again madly and creating all of this rental property. And I just wondered, which is social housing, and I just wondered longer term, should we actually try to change the psyche about, does it matter? Renting to and paying rent to a private landlord is dead money and it's an expensive way to house yourself. Should the state not actually try to re-educate people to say there's nothing wrong with renting long term for 20, 30, 40 years?
Gerry, the Minister will say, well, look, we know this isn't an ideal situation, but what do you want us to do with those 20-odd thousand people? Do you want us to leave them out on the side of the road until we have the houses built? But it's no way to run a business, is it?
Well, look, the housing thing is a miasma of statistics and initiatives and all this, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to Eoin Murphy's position. But I would see the housing situation in Ireland very simply dominated by one overwhelming fact, and that's the problem in Dublin. There is a huge housing shortage in the greater Dublin area, and it would seem to me the only way they can get around it is for the state to start building a huge whack of houses in Dublin. The rest of the country has housing problems, but it's nowhere as acute as Dublin, which is continuing, to expand and expand. And I mean, without being an expert in the area, that would seem to me to be the only way that in actual fact, they'll solve it at the bottom end for people who are actually homeless, and as you move up the scale, for people who just simply want a reasonable place to live. And the private sector simply can't catch up by providing that. So we have to go back to what they used to do in the 1950s. The state builds houses and rents them to people.
OK, listen, thank you both very much indeed. Plenty more to come in the programme. We'll be back after this break.